How does the American Civil War lead to 10mm fantasy miniatures? I'm going to connect the dots. You may remember in January, or maybe it was December, Warlord Games released that epic Civil War sprue with that month's War Games Illustrated magazine, and that looked interesting to me, right? I was always curious about those smaller scales like 10mm and whatnot. These are technically 13.5 millimeter, but it kind of piqued my interest. I thought about making a video about it, right? But by the time I got my copy, it seems that everyone else had already made a video, but I did go ahead and paint that sprue, and that was cool, right? And that got me thinking about black powder. So I had the black powder rules for a long time, of course knew about them for a long time, but I had never actually played them. This is the age of the pandemic, and I'm of course doing all my gaming in Tabletop Simulator, and that's a really easy place to try out new games. So with my little game group, we played a few games of American Civil War Black Powder in Tabletop Simulator. Now that was great, but then we moved on to Napoleonics. So Napoleonics gives you, in my opinion at least, a lot more variety than the American Civil War does for the horse and musket period. So we moved on to playing Napoleonic games in Tabletop Simulator. Of course, that gave me the Napoleonic bug, let's say. So I hauled all my Napoleonic miniatures out of storage and I started to paint them. I noticed that I misspelled it and said painting, and that might be a Freudian slip there. Maybe this is all about psychology, right? But I started painting my old Napoleonic miniatures. There's more story on that, how I forked my Napoleonic collection to two different scales and really complicated my life. But anyway, I got to work on my Napoleonic miniatures. And painting and rebasing them. I also started thinking about rules, right? So, got to be some more Napoleonic rules out there, right? I hadn't looked into Napoleonics for a while. I thought, what are the cool new rules? I got this set of rules from the gentleman who did ADLG, right? The French person. I thought an ADLG-sized Napoleonic game might be interesting, so I did. I picked up that set of rules, and I haven't played it yet, but hey, it's sitting on the shelf, and someday, maybe in Tabletop Simulator, we'll give that a try. But in parallel to that, right, Black Powder got me thinking about War Master. War Master, of course, came from, I guess, the early 2000s, which I never played. Really wasn't doing much of this hobby back in my young adulthood that was perhaps more focused on binge drinking. But I missed out on War Master in the 2000s. But hey, that doesn't stop you from playing it now, because there is a community set of rules for it, War Master Revolution, right, which you can access for free. And of course, you can try out anything on Tabletop Simulator for practically nothing. And that's what we did. Last night we played War Master on Tabletop Simulator, and that was a lot of fun. Of course, that got me thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could play this for real someday? So I thought, where can you get 10mm fantasy miniatures? I don't have any lying around myself. I had never really tried it. Of course, there are some manufacturers for that, but the fastest path was probably to 3D print some. So I do have a 3D printer. It's been sitting in the garage for the past 6 months, gathering dust really, and so I needed to clean that off, right? Clean up the old 3D printing area in the garage and print some 10mm fantasy miniatures. I got some STLs from Forest Dragon, right, is the designer for what I purchased there. But anyway, those are printing right now in my garage. Of course, can't think about doing anything without thinking, how can I spend more money? So I started thinking about, new 3D printing accessories. Why use that little pickle jar which can have a $120 contraption to wash your 3D prints, that sort of thing. So that's a possibility. We haven't checked out on Amazon with that stuff yet, but we'll just see. So I'm curious, does your hobby brain work the same way? These are sort of dots that you're constantly connecting in your own head. Or do you stick with the same set of rules in the same period or genre for months or years at a time? I tend to flip back and forth between different things. I go through cycles that usually last anywhere from 2 to 6 months, I'd say, for myself. This represents what I just explained, about 2 months worth of hobby time. I think the pandemic maybe accelerates this a bit. In the old days, right, when I was only playing with physical miniatures on a physical table with real life flesh and blood human beings in my living room, trying a new game was something that took months to do, really. It would involve painting the miniatures over a period of maybe, say, 3 to 6 months before we could even try a new game, right? So the cycle, I think, was longer. But these days with Tabletop Simulator, it's just too tempting to try new games. So I find myself, I think, flitting from thing to thing more. So again, let me know, how do you do it, right? You can maybe let me know in the comments. Thanks.